Hello everyone, my name is Scalti, and today we're going to be looking at creating a bolted iron plate factory making 60 items per minute. I hope you enjoy. Alright, before we start building, let's go over the prerequisites for this factory. First up being the alternative recipes you're going to need. We're going to be using two of them. We're going to be using the bolted iron plate, and that is this one here, making 15 per minute off of one assembler, and we're also going to be using the casted screw, and I'll show you that one in a second. The reason why we want the casted screw is if we look at the amount of screws that we need per 3 plates, 50 per, that's 250 total per assembler that we're going to need. The casted screw produces 50 per minute off of a single constructor, so 50 times 5 is 250, so we need 5 constructors per assembler to make enough screws. Additionally, based on the amount of screws we need going into a single assembler, we need Mark III belt tech, because we need 250 on a Mark III belt, which can hold up to or transport up to 270 items per minute. Now when it comes to how I have the belts arranged, I have 3 conveyors coming in on this base foundation here. The exterior belt spots here will be the 2 lines of 270 iron ore, and the middle is going to be 250, giving us an overall requirement of 790 iron ore per minute coming into the factory. And I just have that coming off of this bus tower here, or belt train tower here, from 3 pure iron nodes with Mark II miners on them, with them overclocked to yield the necessary amounts. Again, that's 270 on the exterior 2 and 250 on the middle. Additionally, on the right, you can see the actual amount of structures we're going to need, or machines we're going to need for this factory to operate, and that's going to be 27 smelters, 38 constructors, and 4 assemblers. It's going to be quite a bit in a very small space, but it'll look really good. Additionally, in terms of all of those machines and how everything's running, the total approximate power draw is going to be 358.6 megawatts. It's definitely a hefty increase, but also at the same time, it's a pretty hefty increase in terms of the output, in terms of the 60 reinforced iron plates per minute that we're making. So with that, let's go ahead and actually get some construction going. So based on the amount of smelters that we need, which is 27, and if the overall footprint of our structure is 9 by 3, or as a standalone building 5 by 11, all of these are going to be smelters on both sides. So we want to go ahead and take our conveyor wall and put in 9 on each side. And if you are not familiar, I'm using the Smart mod, which is pretty fantastic, and I'm having some difficulty trying to get the right side of this. It seems like I can't turn it, which is an occasional bug, but we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. So we want the 9 on each side. I'm sorry, we're using the Smart mod, which allows you to place multiple objects, walls, foundations, etc. at the same time. There's spacing options. It's pretty great. And it actually uses the material cost rather than just copy pasting for free. I'll have a link to the mod in the description down below. We want to go ahead and put a single wall conveyor over here. This is going to be our eventual location for our reinforced iron plates coming down from the top and feeding into here, and then looping down and coming out the side. Or you can change up how you want these stored depending on how you have your system running. We're going to do 2 normal walls down here as well, and then we're going to again do a wall conveyor with a single conveyor wall or conveyor hole in the middle. And this is going to be supplying that 250, because we're going to take that 250 and bring it up to our second floor for our smelters. But before we get to that second floor, we need to finish up the first one. So we can now go ahead and fill in this entire space here. We can get our smelters placed on top. And this is the smart spacing I'm talking about in the Smart mod. So we need 9 smelters, and if we hold P and we scroll up on the mouse wheel, it gives them equal distance spacing. We can place 9 all at the same time. It's pretty fantastic. Additionally, when placing these smelters, you want to make sure that that they're hanging over the edge by just a little bit, so that way when we go to put a lift in place, like right here, you mark one lift, it will cleanly snap to the foundation wall or the conveyor wall below it. So we can go ahead and get all of these plugged in real quick. Alright, let's go ahead and get all the belting sorted out for these down below. So again, we have our 270, 250, and 270 iron ore coming in. And thankfully we have 9 on each side. So the logistics down here is pretty simple. First off, we're going to take a splitter facing in. So you want that orange arrow on the outside of your factory. And you want the edge of the splitter to be in line with the walls above. So that way when you take a lift, it can connect cleanly to the splitter down below. We can repeat that on each set, so we have 3, 3. Repeat the process on the other side. Go ahead and get these connected up, and we can go ahead and put these lifts in, and then we'll get these connected to the splitters. We can use Mark 1 belts here. Oops. Alright, so now we want to take splitters and place them one foundation over from the middle, and again facing in, and in a similar fashion aligned with what would be the wall above here. And we will take our first belt, our first Mark II belt, because we're feeding 90 per belt line. And bringing that behind and then splitting it out here. And then we have our Mark III belts coming into the splitter, like so. And then we're going to take another Mark II, and we're going to bring it down and bring it in between each set of lifts. 1, 2. And get that connected in there, like so. And then repeat the same process, bringing this Mark II belt all the way down. And you can see that I'm doing a 2-step offset. So when it comes to these nice 90-degree bends, so I'm looking at the splitter in front here and lining it up like this. And so if I bring it like that, it'll then give me that nice 90-degree turn. That's the tightest turn you can make on a belt. And so we just repeat the same process on the other side here. Alright, now that we have that sorted out, we want to take this middle line of 250 and break it into this conveyor wall here. So we just bring it right to the edge of the foundation, and then we take our Mark III lift and connect it just like that. And that is all the logistics down here. So when it comes to the output for the smelters, you want them to all go in the opposite direction of where this hole is here that is going to feed up to the second floor. So we want the belts from the smelters going up the factory to be on the opposite end. So we're just going to take our mergers and place them in front of the smelters like so, and you can ignore the first two since they're just going to feed into these mergers. And run these all the way down the length of the factory. Get them all connected up with Mark I belts. Bring these, bring that out one, then over. Oh, I'm sorry. So if you bring it out just one step, it's still technically inside the hitbox of the smelter, so we want to bring it out 2 steps. Nope, you don't want to do that either. You want to bring it back this way. Like that. There we go. My mistake. Or you can always, instead of bringing it out 1, 2, you can bring it out and turn it like so. Okay, so if we want to min-max the belts here, you can. Otherwise, you can just slap Mark 3 belts on this whole thing, and you'll be right as rain. No problem. So we have 30 and 30, that's 60, so we can still use a Mark 1 belt here. And now we have 90, so that's a Mark 2. 120. And then we go into the Mark 3s the rest of the way. Alright, and that's the first floor. To get started on our second floor, we want to bring out our 8x4 foundations. And we want to build that up essentially what would be 5 times from the edge here, if you're on this walkway path. Bring that up 5 times so that way we can meet the clearance for the smelters. And then from here, we build out 4 8x1 foundations. But in this instance, I'm going to do the 2 here, and then this 4th one, I will use the smart mod and build out all of them at the same time. You can now get rid of the top one and do the same thing. Delete the extra foundations, including the 8x4, and you have your sandwich layer. You want to make sure that you build both the top and bottom part of the sandwich layer, because when you start doing the logistics and placing the splitters and from time to time mergers, build those first. You won't be able to actually build the foundations. You'll get a collision error. There we go. Nailed it. All right, so we have our 2 lines of our iron ingots coming up, but they're not actually going into this floor. So on this side, we want just our normal walls. On this side here, we're going to be placing no smelters. So again, normal walls. We can do that all the way down. And then over here, we do have our 250 iron ingots coming up. So we want to do a conveyor wall with a single hole. I'm going to leave this spot open so that way we can get in and do all of our belt work. Then over here is where we're going to be placing all of our smelters. So I will place conveyor walls with a single hole all the way down the line. We can go ahead and get our smelters in place now. And get our Mark 1 belts connected to them. Grab our Mark 3 lift, bring up our ore. And for here, we can just take our splitters and place them similar to how we did below, groups of 3. And here we're going to place it in the middle of the foundation, so that way when we place our Mark 1 belt, this little slope here is not too steep, and we can actually construct our belts, and then we just get those connected up. So we just do that 2 more times. Like so. Then we can go ahead and place a splitter in front of the middle one. Use a Mark 3 belt and bring up our iron ingots. Actually, I'm sorry, before we do that, we want to get all of these connected though with Mark 2s. It's always a good practice to build your way out in the middle of a sandwich layer, unless you're using something like no clip, or you can always run around and you can slide underneath the belts if needed. I like to use the fly mod for these guides, makes things a lot faster and quicker though. So we got all of that sorted out, we can go ahead and close that up. And now for the output of these smelters, one of these is going to be underclocked, and that's going to be the middle one. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that is our middle one. We only need 250 ingots being made off this floor, but we want 2 belts of outputs, so we want to make sure that we're not just letting them all run as needed. We want to make sure that we're balancing everything out correctly, so we're going to underclock this one to only produce 10 per minute. Yeah, if it'll take. It doesn't look like it is. Maybe it's because it doesn't have power. But you want the middle one here to be at 33% or producing 10 ingots per minute. In front of that one, we're going to place a splitter like so. And then on the 4 where our output is going to be, which is over here. We can place our mergers directly in front. And then for the remaining 4, we want them offset against the edge here, or essentially what would be considered side by side for these here. I'm gonna start with this one. Then we bring our belting out. So again, 30 and 30 is 60, so that's a Mark 1. This is now 90, Mark 2. This is now 120, Mark 2. And then we connect these up with a Mark 1. So now we have 15 going into here. So this gives us 125 coming off. So we need to upgrade to a Mark 3 for that extra 5 iron ingots on this belt. Bring it all the way to the edge. We do the same thing here. So we got 15 coming out of here. Plus 30 is 45, so that's a Mark 1. And now we have 75, so that's a Mark 2. 105, so Mark 2. And then 125. Wait, is my math off? Did I do something wrong here? Let's double check that. 15, 45, 75, 105. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, this is not... Yes, this is not 15, because we underclocked this. It's only 5. I apologize. So it's 5, 35, 65, 95, 125. There we go. And the same thing for down there. My apologies. Slight mistake. So we have all of that coming off to the side here, and that floor is now complete. Now that we're done with our smelters, we're going to go ahead and start working on our constructors, and the first floor for that is going to be making our iron plates. So let's go ahead and break out our 8x4 foundations, build that up 4 times on top of the previous floor. So 4 plus the one next to it, technically 5, I guess. And we'll get our next sandwich layer started. So for this one here, we're going to be placing 18 constructors for all of our plates, and because we have a length of 9 on each side, the entire long edge is going to be occupied by our wall conveyors. So we're going to fill that all the way up. And no inputs on this side. This is where the ingots for our screws will be going up. And on the opposite side is where we do have our ingots coming up for this floor. So we're going to use a 2-wall conveyor here in the middle, and then normal walls, like so. Then we go ahead and get our constructors in place, and similar with our smelters, you want them hanging over the edge. Their little feet here hanging over, so that way when we place our lifts connecting to them, like these smelters, you guessed it, they connect nicely. So for the belting in here, it's going to get a little tight, but it's not going to be that bad. Let's actually go ahead and get our lifts in place. Let's bring up our ingots here. So essentially it's just going to be a 1 belt to split, and then that split to 3 splitters. So in front of each bank of 3, we're going to place our splitter. Similar to our smelters, we want them in the middle of the platform, each group of 3 here. Get these connected up. Also the pack utility mod, which is what I'm using for the ability to fly and not having to utilize resources, also provides no clip, so I can go in and out pretty easily. It's very good for doing any kind of sandwich work down here. And so we're going to be placing our splitter, at least for this one, directly here. And we will go ahead and run this Mark III all the way here. So, and then for this side, it's going to get a little interesting, if you will. So again, we're going to be placing our splitters like the other side for each grouping of 3, like so. And you don't have to follow this exactly, you know, it's just kind of like a make it fit. If you don't mind clipping, you can definitely just clip things as well. So if you wanted to, if you don't mind clipping, you can just place this splitter in front of here, and then like how we ran this belt, you just run the belt like so. But obviously you can see that we do have that clipping. If you don't want to clip, what you can do is just go ahead and place your splitter. Jeez, come on. Here. You can run the Mark III down. Oop, a little too far. My mistake. Guess we can run it backwards here. Like so. And so this will connect like that. This will connect into this one here. And then this one goes all the way down to the end. And a very small amount of clipping here overall. But not too bad. And I don't mind the clipping because it's inside the sandwich layer. You're not going to see it from the outside. And my philosophy is if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. So that's how we get that going. Now when it comes to our outputs for this floor, it's going to get a little interesting. And we are doing this based on how these screws are going to be traveling up the floors above. So on the middle constructor here, so count 4, so the 5th one in, we're going to be placing no splitters actually. I mean, you can if you really want absolute symmetry, but essentially we're going to be placing just a merger in front of the outer 4 from the middle, like so. And on the middle one here, we're just going to take this one and go off to the side here. And then we'll do the same thing on the opposite side. And connect it like that. And then we just get these connected up with our Mark I belts. And additionally, if you don't want to worry about min-maxing, you can use... Interesting. You can use your Mark III belts for everything in this factory. We're not doing any kind of load balancing using belt speed cap, essentially. It's like I accidentally just used Mark IIIs there. But, so if you do want to min-max, however, let's go ahead and switch these out, I guess, at that point. If we're going to try and do this. So we have our 20 iron plates, plus 20 and 20, that's 60, so that's a Mark I, plus 40, that's 100, Mark II, 140, Mark III, and then Mark III at the edge here. And then repeat the same thing on the opposite side, so 20, 20, 20 is 60, 100, Mark II, 140, Mark III, and Mark III. Just like that. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of symmetry here. You're looking at it top down. Depending on how you look at it. It's technically asymmetrical, but it's also symmetrical. Anyway, so yeah, that is that floor. So our next floor is going to be the first one starting the production of our screws. And so building up at this point, we are on the constructor layer, and normally in my past builds, I've only done 3 foundation height, or a 3 foundation height between floors here, because you can see that we are clear for our constructors. However, due to the lighting update, they've introduced lights into the game, we are now switching up the build to utilize 4 foundations through every single sandwich layer based on how we do lighting in the factories. If you don't want to do lighting, not a problem. You don't have to do that. You can definitely do 3 foundations in height if you want to minimize the total height of your build. Otherwise, you want to make sure that you have 4 meter high foundations in between each floor. So we have the next sandwich layer built out. Go ahead and get rid of the access here. Now here we're going to be doing something a little interesting. So we need 20 total constructors. We can't fit 20 on a floor, so we're going to do 10 per floor. So based on the length of 9, we're going to start off with a wall conveyor on the long edge. And then normal. Conveyor wall normal. And repeat this alternating pattern all the way down. It looks like I'm 3 short here on the bottom. Get this built out. There we go. And then a conveyor wall down here. On this side, we're not going to do any inputs or outputs. We can do solid normal walls and then repeat that alternating wall on walls on this side as well. Words. And then over here we get a little bit of interesting belting going on. So we have the 2 belts for our ingots coming up. So we're going to do a 2-wall conveyor here in the middle, but instead of doing normal walls on the sides here, we're actually going to be doing walls with a single conveyor hole, based on how we're going to be doing the belting on the inside. But before I get into that, let's go ahead and get our constructors placed. So we're going to be doing 5 constructors per side. And getting these all belted up. So the belting inside of these floors, specifically for the constructors, we're going to be doing 2 1-to-5 load balancers. They are tricky. I'm not going to bother showing me putting the belts down. I'm going to utilize a screenshot, which you can see here. I lied, not here, in a second. First off, I'm going to go over these belts here. So we're going to bring up our iron ingots on Mark III belts. And when you look at the screenshot, you'll see on the left side that we're actually going to be placing 2 splitters right here. And essentially we're going to be splitting each of these in half, and the half of each one is going to go up to the next floor. And that begs the question, why don't we just have a single belt coming into this floor, divvying it all up 1 to 10, or 1 to 2 to 10, and then have the other lift here go up to the next floor? Well, based on the conveyor walls and how they're all set up, and what we need here with the iron ingots coming up, or I'm sorry, the iron plates coming up from this side and on that side, we want to leave this gap here in the middle open, so we don't want to do a single conveyor wall here. And since we're reflecting that on both sides, we need to split it up like this. And so we're going to have half of each belt going out and then up to the next floor. So now that I've said that, here is the screenshot, and I'll be providing hopefully the merger splitter notations that I'll be placing over top of these. If it's a splitter, I'll have an arrow pointing toward the S, and that is the input to the splitter, which then the other 3 become the outputs. And then for the merger, I'll have an arrow facing away from the M to tell you which way the merger is outputting the belts. So that way it kind of makes things a little easier to follow along. Because I use white, it's kind of hard to tell from time to time. So with that, feel free to pause the video here, and once you get that wrapped up, go ahead and hit play. Alright, so as you can see, the belting inside definitely gets tight and finicky. And again, this kind of solution is intended to avoid belt clipping, because I did do that in the past, and I had some negative feedback on that. So I'm trying to do right by everyone and trying to avoid clipping as much as possible. So taking a little extra effort and trying to get that done. So with that, let's go ahead and work on the output for these screws here. It can be in either direction, it doesn't matter, at least for the first floor. So let's go ahead and run the first floor's output away from all the inputs. So the inputs of the floor, you want everything facing the opposite direction. So we'll get our mergers set up to do so. So we have 50 coming out of each constructor, so that's 50 on that belt there. So we need to immediately jump up to the Mark IIs. Oops. We can just connect that. So that's 100. We have 150, so now we're up to the Mark III for the rest of the way out. Like so. So this next floor is going to be pretty much the same thing as what we did, just with a minor difference based on where those inputs are coming up from this floor. So once again, 5 foundations high. We'll get our sandwich layer in place with the constructors in the same spots. Now for here, we have our wall conveyors, so we're going to mimic that. The normal wall in between. And then we'll just keep going on as normal. So for the output here, we have 125 divided by 2. So we don't use Mark 2s or just, you know, Mark 3s. Totally fine once again. So bring those up. And again, I'm going to do another screenshot. Belting's in here is going to be a little different. But again, screenshot, overlays, and then go ahead and pause it here. And then we will continue once you get that wrapped up. Alright, now once we have all of that sorted out, the output for this is going to be the opposite side of whatever the floor below it was. So if you followed this, how I did it, this is leading away from the input for that floor. So the merging belts are going to be heading toward us where the inputs for this floor is. We're going to get our mergers facing toward us, at least from this direction. Is all placed. Alright. The final floor isn't terribly tricky, at least compared to the rest of them. So for that, let's go ahead and get that next floor started. Again, building up 4 above. I'm going to build one over here just because it'll be a little easier how I use Smart Mod. And so normally when it comes to an assembler floor, I typically would do a 2 high situation, a sandwich layer that's 2 walls high. But based on how simple the belting is going to be for this, not worrying about it. So for our outputs, we have our 2 belts here for the screws coming up, plus we still have this belt all the way down here for our iron plates coming up. So the middle wall here is going to be a wall conveyor with 3 holes in it, and then on each side is where we're going to be placing our assemblers, so we can go ahead and do our 2. Then we do normal walls all along each long side, and then we'll mimic this on the opposite side as well. So we have our 3 in the middle, 2 on each side. We'll go ahead and get our assemblers placed, and once again, we want these hanging off by just a little bit. So if you see that they're like the hitbox, the white collision box essentially, we want that just hanging over just like so. So that way we can get all these placed, all the lifts placed in a similar fashion to the rest of the factory. So for here, before I actually go placing these belts, so the insides are going to be the screws. So let's go ahead and get our Mark 3s coming up. Oops, 1 too high. And so the Mark 3, the way this is going to be set up is we'll go ahead and get this in place actually so I can show you. So the Mark 3 is just going to come up and loop around just like that, and that will deliver the screws to the assemblers. And then for our plates, essentially the lift will come up. Just go ahead and use a Mark 3, and then we can go ahead and just split it right here in the middle, and then run a Mark 3 belt each side, and then up into the lift. And that's it. Very, very simple load balancing for an assembler floor. It's not terribly common in these builds, but thankfully this time around, pretty simple. Oh, that's not where the belt goes. Let's try that one more time. Alright. So for the output, it's totally up to you on how you want to arrange this. I'm just going to be running it off the edge here, and then all the way down to where this first wall was built. So if you wanted to do the same thing, essentially what we're going to be doing, it's a little tricky here to an extent. We're going to take a temporary 8x1 foundation and go ahead and actually just get all these merged up to a single line. And so we're doing 60 total bolted iron plates per minute, so we can just use Mark 1 belts for everything, which is kind of cool. And it'll be really satisfying to see a singular belt line maxed out with reinforced iron plates. So for here, we just want to bring it out 1, 2, I think, yeah, we'll play it safe, 3 steps. And then we can go ahead and take our Mark 1 lift and come all the way, whoops. What? My brain messed something up here. I'm not sure what. Oh my gosh, okay. I apologize. Here we go. So we essentially want to figure out how far we can bring a belt with a wall here. So just for show, I'll bring that here. Bring our Mark 1 belt out to run into a lift here. So this is essentially where we can place our Mark 1. So we bring it in to the halfway point. So that way when we place the lift, you can see that if it's over 1 more, we can't build it, but here we can. And so now we bring this all the way down. That's still not right. Oh! I'm gonna leave this in here just because it just goes to show that anyone can make a mistake. And normally I do bloopers, but so we wanted to do right here where it snaps with the lift. No, that's not right. Is it right? Let's find out. Let's keep making mistakes until we learn. Hey, there we go. Okay, so yes, we want it to come to where it's snapping with the lift, bringing this all the way down here. And then before we get this one connected, this is how we got to do it. And this is where I got a little confused. Bring the lift on the inside first, so that way the direction of this lift is correct. We bring this up right to here. And then if we build it like that, it snaps like so. It's a little wonky, but it works. There's no other real clean way to do it in terms of getting the output down, unless you maybe run on the outside of your structure, which is totally doable, totally fine. You can definitely do it that way. So that's essentially build complete if you don't want to do lighting. And if you do, stick around. Oh hey, thanks for sticking around. So in order to get our lighting in place, we're going to start all the way back down at the bottom where our smelters are. And we're using the street lights. And the way I place these is essentially in between each smelter at the edge of the, like where essentially the intersection of the foundations would be. And note the direction of the orange arrow is facing out, so that way when constructed, it'll illuminate the backside of the smelters. And so I'll just place these all the way down in a line. I'm not going to go ahead and place them continuously. I'm just going to show you how to do each floor, essentially. So there's essentially one side, then you can plug in your lights control panel wherever you so choose and kind of get that all set up and operational. And you can do the same thing on this floor with the smelters, just placing on the intersection of each foundation. But here it gets a little different just because of how much space the constructors take up. We can't, we can no longer place them here. So essentially all I do is I just bring them in a little bit, like so. And again on that foundation joining line. And once you do get an entire floor built out, the pattern just really adds, especially when you have it on both sides here, which is pretty slick. Do the same thing on this floor, essentially. But you can either do every other, or you can essentially place them in between here and alternate. So you can do middle and then switch, etc. The other option would be to just simply place them in the middle here, in between each constructor, like so. But we at least have the option, or you at least have the option to kind of do it however you so choose. But as you can see, I'm modifying the gap in between the floors to accommodate these streetlights. You can do the same thing on this floor, and then for this one, you know, it's kind of freeform, however you kind of really want to do it. What I'll typically do is run them, whoops, straight over top like this, or you can run them on the insides here, like so. They kind of meet up in the same location. It's all just dependent on how you'd like to do it. That's essentially how you can set up your streetlights within the factory. So with that, that's now technically build complete. All I have left, I'm going to put some glass around the entire structure, run some power to everything, and we'll call it a day. See you guys on the other side. Alright, and that'll wrap up our build. I hope you found a lot of value in the tutorial. If you did, feel free to leave a like, it does help out the channel. And if you want to see more content in the future, be sure to subscribe if you are not already and hit that notification bell for when the next video goes live. And if you have any questions about the build, leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But with that, thank you so much for watching. Take care.